Hi guys, what's going on? Welcome to another of my videos. I really apologize I didn't upload my video yesterday. I made my video yesterday, I just didn't upload it. So what I'm going to do is do a double upload today, where I basically do two videos, the one I did yesterday and the one I'm planning to do today. So let's go over our basic, I guess, where we left off yesterday. Well, for you guys, it would be yesterday. We were talking more about exposure therapy and how that's all we're talking about, exposure therapy. And I think we found someone who had a fear of driving. No, they had a fear of social anxiety. And I'm gonna be honest, at this point, I don't think I'm gonna find any more anything more interesting about the fact that this person is using exposure therapy to treat their social anxiety. So let's look at this one. Eat, sleep, be brave, repeat. Exposure therapy for anxiety, agoraphobia, and panic attacks. Now, I have choking phobia, so this may not be the best thing for choking phobia. At the same time, you can understand anxiety works in a very similar way. It's how it affects certain areas. For example, going out, eating food, flying on a plane, walking in a park, touching bees. It's how that anxiety manifests itself primarily that is kind of different. So let's go on with the video. I got some food here. It's going to be my exposure. So on a scale of 1 to 100, you need to ask yourself, well, how anxious do you feel choking on this food? On a scale of 1 to 100, I feel like 10 out of 100. Next thing you gotta do is just do the exposure. And while it's going on, this is a video.
Hello, again. It is Wednesday, 25th. Not really, it's Thursday, 26th of November, but it does kind of feel a bit like Groundhog Day, because I'm gonna go and do exactly what I did yesterday, in the hope that there's a slight improvement. Now, I do feel more nervous today. I will be 100% honest. I do feel, I don't know, there's a bit of the jelly leg thing. I'm a bit nervous about doing this walk. Now, I know that I did it yesterday and everything was fine, but this is the point of exposure therapy, is to go and do it again. Get out there, do the same thing until you're not nervous about it anymore. Now, something could happen this time, or it might just be as easy as it was yesterday once I get out there, because that's sort of the battle that I'm facing. It's crossing that line, and the line is the front door, and once I'm on the other side of it and I'm walking, yesterday I didn't feel too bad. The anticipation weren't there yesterday. It's here today. It's here. But we're going to give it a go. Groundhog. Eat, sleep, be brave, repeat. Okay, so really question. I just went for it. Bang. Right out. Okay, so anticipation building up. I think the key is perhaps to slow down when you feel like that. Just take a breath, slow down, breathe it in, and go again. Here we go. Something. Does that make sense? I feel like I need to lean up against something. I feel off balance today. Not the success that came yesterday. Everything feels more intense. You can probably see it. You can probably see it on my face, that things don't feel as easy. The legs are tightening up. I'm warm. Oh God. I think I'm on the brink here. Quite nice. Yeah. I was then. You may well have seen it. Still am. Feel the urge to run. Hey. Cheers, mate. You're up. Lacey. Speeding up. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, wait a second. That was intense. I had so many feelings, and it's almost cool that I got it on film. Now that I'm home, I don't feel as bad. But before I went, I was thinking to myself, like yesterday when I did it, I had no water, no bottle of water with me, and I didn't take any mints or anything. I've stopped eating mints, I don't eat them anymore, because of the sugar, basically. So I thought that to myself before I went, and I thought, well, I'm not going to take them again, because that's just silly. When I first stepped foot out of the door, the first few minutes were dodgy. Then I got to the patch of grass and I was uncertain as to whether I was going to do the same journey as yesterday, because I just didn't feel as confident. Then I walked past the tennis courts, as you would have seen, and when I got to the stretch back in the houses, it became so freaking intense. And it was after I said, but the first sort of rush was when I said, I feel like I almost should have anxiety. It's almost like I'm wanting it to come because I should have it. So at that moment, it started to build and build, and then I got to the point yesterday where I said on the video that I'm the furthest from home, and I remembered that in my head, but this is the point, I'm as far away from home as I can be. Then I said on the film that my legs are starting to go weak, and it just confirmed all that was going on in my head already. And then I got to within about 50 yards of the corner where I would turn to walk towards home, like on my street, and then the adrenaline, bang, that was a full hit, and my legs just went to jelly, and I felt, I don't know if you could see, and I'm going to watch it back because I haven't stopped the video yet since I've got in. I want to watch back and see if you can see where I'm almost at the point where I'm going to run, because that was where I was. It was like I was shouting in my own head. The intensity was just, oh my days. That was as close to a panic attack as I have come on film in a long time. I mean, I've had them recently, but I've not, that was almost a self-inflicted sort of thing, the exposure. Now the point is, and this is crucial, is whether I can do that again tomorrow, knowing how it's just gone, because that, it's sort of not being afraid of what's just happened and doing it again. It's almost perfect. I could not have written that any better. I've had one successful day, and then you feel great, but then the next day, it's a little bit more difficult. Like the anticipation's building, and that's exactly what's happened. And then I've gone out there and I've done it, and it's been 50 times worse than it was yesterday. But it's perfect, because tomorrow now is the ultimate test. Today wasn't really a test because I didn't have that memory association with the horrible feelings, because it went so well. Today, I've got those feelings. I've got the horrible feeling. And now that I've just come home, it's like, breathe. I feel like I need to just sit down for 5 minutes and just chill out for a bit, because I've had that blast of adrenaline. How about we move ahead with our plan today to try apple pie for our food exposure? Okay, that sounds good. Great. Well, before we get started, let's go ahead and discuss some of the specifics of this exposure, specifically looking at what we want to accomplish. So obviously we'll both be eating together. We'll each be having a slice of the pie. So Nathan, when you faced this kind of scenario in the past, what are some of the safety behaviors that you might have tried to use?
Obviously, I normally try to avoid this kind of food, but if I was considering eating it, I'd probably try and calculate how many calories there are, and most likely try to compensate some way later on, either by exercising more or maybe skipping a meal.
Okay, good. So you know, as a part of this treatment, we're going to try to steer clear of any of those safety behaviors today. Are there
Let's see here.
Exposure therapy is a technique in behavior therapy used to treat anxiety disorders. It involves the exposure of the patient to the feared object or context without any danger in order to overcome their anxiety. Procedurally, it is similar to the fear extinction paradigm in rodent work. Numerous studies have demonstrated its effectiveness in the treatment of anxiety disorders such as PTSD and specific phobias. Exposure-based therapy can be effective in preventing the progression from acute stress disorder to post-traumatic stress disorder, according to a report in the June 2008 issue of Archive. Western clinical practice and behavioral therapy was first emerging. South African psychologists and psychiatrists first used exposure as a way to reduce pathological fears, such as phobias and anxiety-related problems, and they brought their methods to England in the Maudsley Hospital training program. Joseph Wolpe, 1915 to 1997, was one of the first psychiatrists to spark interest in treating psychiatric problems as behavioral issues. He sought consultation with other behavioral psychologists, among them James G. Taylor, 1897 to 1973, who worked in the psychology department of the University of Cape Town in South Africa. Although most of his work went unpublished, Taylor was the first psychologist known to use exposure therapy treatment for anxiety, including methods of situational exposure with response prevention, a common exposure therapy technique still being used. Since the 1950s, several sorts of exposure therapy have been developed, including systematic desensitization, flooding, implosive therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, in vivo exposure therapy, and imaginal exposure therapy. Exposure therapy is based on the principle of respondent conditioning, often termed Pavlovian extinction. The exposure therapist identifies the cognitions, emotions, and physiological arousal that accompany a fear-inducing stimulus, and then tries to break the pattern of escape that maintains the fear. This is done by exposing the patient to progressively stronger fear-inducing stimuli. Fear is minimized with each of a series of steadily escalating steps or challenges, a hierarchy, which can be explicit, static, or implicit, dynamic. See method of factors, until the fear is finally gone. The patient is able to terminate the procedure at any time. There are 3 types of exposure procedures. The first is in vivo or real life. This type exposes a patient to actual fear-inducing situations. For example, if someone fears public speaking, the person may be asked to give a speech to a small group of people. The second type of exposure is imaginal, where patients are asked to imagine a situation that they are afraid of. This procedure is helpful for people who need to confront feared thoughts and memories. The third type of exposure is interoceptive, which may be used for more specific disorders such as panic or post-traumatic stress disorder. Patients confront feared bodily symptoms such as increased heart rate and shortness of breath. All types of exposure may be used together or separately. While evidence clearly supports the effectiveness of exposure therapy, some clinicians are uncomfortable using imaginal exposure therapy, especially in cases of PTSD. They may not understand it, are not confident in their own ability to use it, or more commonly, they see significant contraindications for their client. Flooding therapy also exposes a patient to feared stimuli, but it is quite distinct.
Alright, I think you guys get the the gist of what's going on here. My exposure therapy is over for today. I wanted to eat more. It's just that I don't know. I think I'm just never been a big eater. I don't think it has anything to do with the fear of choking. Like, has anything to do with my specific phobia. I try to eat a lot. And I try to stuff myself sometimes. Like I said today, I'm gonna eat everything, and after a certain period, your stomach just says no, and I don't. Your stomach just says no, and as much as you want to put the food in your mouth, my stomach, it starts getting sick. It starts almost like rejecting it. It just says like, if you put this in my mouth, it's just gonna be, I could puke. So what's the point? You're full, and then other things start happening. Like, oh, it's good to not eat good. It feels good. It's good not to push yourself in a way to, eat. You don't want to. I'm trying to say is this is so odd. I try to eat more and I end up eating just as much as before. So, I hope you guys, just want to say a few things on the videos we watched. Number one, what the first guy was talking about, he had agoraphobia. So if you guys don't know what agoraphobia is, so I'm just getting just so you guys know what I'm doing. I'm just getting my jacket on, take my medication and everything. So I go outside, have a cigarette. So agoraphobia is where you fear not being able to have an exit to a place. So, for example, if you're to, you know, I'll give the example I was in the video. He was walking in a, it looked like a trail, and on one side there was a fence. On the other side, I think there was like a park. The park, though, like there was a bunch of high trees, so you can't really pass that way. So they made a trail there, and you know, to me, it reminds me of a trail so I used to take when I was a kid. You know, coming from the school to my grandma's house, they were small and unremarkable. I mean, I don't have agoraphobia, thank you God for that. I'm trying to think though what he would be thinking. It would be more like, because I do remember, like, it definitely is remarkable. Like, if I was to go on a trail where it didn't look like it was very narrow, I think most people would, to a certain extent, think like, okay, if I get robbed, what's gonna happen? It's a perfect place for joggers to get mugged, stuff like that, right? Let's have us pills here. Right, it's a perfect place for joggers to get mugged. I mean, see, do you understand though? If there's someone who has agoraphobia, it would be way more blown up. It would be like, what's the word? I don't want to use the word inappropriate. It's misjudged. The fear is misjudged. It's like more than you think it is. What do you call it? Inaccurate, I think is the best word. Inaccurate, right? Most people would fear, a healthy fear, walking, you know, on a trail that seems to have no exit. You know, it's just like narrow. I would, and I would consider myself probably more anxious than most people. So if he's having problems in developing to this level of having agoraphobia, I mean, it's just something you need to deal with, and the best way to deal with it is through exposure therapy. Oh yeah, the second thing I wanted to say about this was I'm thinking, I don't know for sure. I'm thinking out loud. I was thinking when I was watching the video. This guy was obviously forced to do this, right? He learned about exposure therapy, and then he did it. Now, in the beginning, when you first learned about it, this was just me thinking. I'm thinking maybe he was told to do something less anxiety-provoking on his list. Maybe he made a list of fears, and he was perhaps told to do, for example, just going outside and walking outside on his lawn. And what I think happened is, I think he was mentioning this, he was going on his lawn, or past basically, I guess, the farthest point he's ever been from his house. And when he was about to go, you know, that next step, so that you're farther away from your house than you've ever been before, you know, like in that Lord of the Rings movie, I could see it from one person who has anxiety to another. I could see what he was thinking, which was, you know, this is new and I'm gonna be scared. I know this sounds weird. It's a feeling, and I think it's very common for people who have to deal with exposures, because doing an exposure is a new thing. Most people don't do exposures on a regular basis or on a semi-regular basis. What they do instead is something known as avoidance, you know, which sounds pretty self-explanatory. To continue with the example in the video, I could see in his face he was used to avoiding. By avoiding, I mean he would you know, not go out from his house. You know, he would find ways for him to quote-unquote function normally. And I'm using the word function in quotes. I'm also understanding that function has a huge range. Okay, I've made it clear many times there are some exposures I just don't feel comfortable doing, and I still feel functional. I still feel like that's okay, and because I can live without, for example, eating certain foods. It's not like fatal or anything. Anyway, so I'm digressing here. So this guy basically had agoraphobia, and I don't want to you know, belabor this point too much. I just felt like his exposure, as well as it went, he could have probably not so much he could have probably, it's not about would thinking. It's just that when I observed him, I realized he had kind of like an avoidance face. Like, I'm used, like, I'll give you, like, I'm used to being, I'm used to not doing this. I'm used to avoiding things that I know I should be exposing myself to. I'll give you an example. Like, for people who don't do exposures, they'll try to avoid things. So, a simple example for me, I have choking phobia. When I don't do my exposures, I avoid food, right? Very simple. You avoid food because then you won't choke, right? It's impossible to choke without food. I mean, unless you do something really stupid like swallow a nail or something. I mean, we're talking, as I said, normal. Normal is fairly normal. If you're outside, if you think swallowing nails is normal, I mean, you probably need to talk to someone. And so that's what I would do. I would just not eat. And it would get so bad, sometimes I would faint, you know. I would definitely be irritable a lot, very tired. I'd be very tired a lot. Irritable, couldn't concentrate. You know, definitely, you know, if you have social anxiety, you might even feel more sad. Let me think here. And so what you realize is that you get used to this. You get used to, for example, being low energy, having low energy. I know a therapist of mine even said that to me, like, you're low energy. I mean, when I wasn't doing my exposures, perhaps I would be very tired. I would lay in bed a lot. I wouldn't want to do a lot. You know, my mind would just be like hard to think because it doesn't have calories. And what I realized is that your body actually, you know, it starts eating itself, which is really gross. It starts digesting its own organs when it has no food. Which is scary too if you think about it. It means like your body is like your enemy at a certain point. Like if it doesn't feed you, if you don't feed it, it's just gonna eat you. It's like there's an animal in you that just needs to be fed all the time, and if you don't feed it, it'll start eating you. So I found that so gross. Like, I remember someone very close to me was telling me this a long time ago. She went to school for, you know, studying these things, food, nutrition, calories, stuff like that. And she told me one time, she's like, yeah, you know, I didn't know this either, basically. She just wanted to tell us this, that, like, she's learning in school, if you don't eat, you know, if you just stop eating, your body will start eating its own organs. Like, I don't know which ones. Eventually you'll start eating them, and then you'll die because, you know, your body ate part of it. So it's so gross. So that's just, you know, one other, you know, risk or side effect of not doing exposures of what is known as, what a lot of people do when they have anxiety and they have specific phobias, is they avoid. They want to avoid what they're doing. You know, for someone who has social anxiety, they don't want to be like the head of the party. They don't want to be like the social butterfly. They'll be in the corner. So that's something I noticed in that video. I could tell that he was definitely not perhaps as prepared as maybe he thought he would be. On the plus side, I mean, he had this whole panic attack on video, which we saw. Which honestly didn't even look that bad. So, you know, I wish him well. On the plus side as well, I also think that he could have benefited a lot from, I'm sorry, on the plus side, I think he actually did the exposure that he was supposed to do on video. I think he was supposed to only do on video, this is just a hunch in my opinion, he was supposed to do on video just the exposure of him just maybe just walking, you know, maybe just 60 feet, 80 feet outside. And I think that he got overconfident and he said, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. And he did the exposure of the whole walk. And, you know, good for him, because the more the exposure is, the faster the anxiety comes down. Right? And so this is something that works for, I mean, for me it's worked. You guys can see through my videos, it's worked. And I thank God every day. I mean, I try to thank God every day. And I'm convinced that if I do this every day, and stay with my anxiety and stay mindful and focus on breathing and breathing exercises and what's known as mindfulness and relaxation techniques, I can continue to be free of my specific phobia. And I believe a lot of people can continue to be free of their specific phobias through this. Now, I've heard people say, it doesn't work. I don't know where they're getting this idea that it doesn't work. I mean, it's backed by all the science. Where are you, like, I just, you know, what I'm gonna do maybe is, maybe tomorrow we'll watch a video of some woman, because I usually skip over those videos. There is a video, I've seen at least one, of a person who had a fear of, she had a specific phobia. And she said exposure therapy didn't work for her. So I wanna know what exactly, like, how is it not working? Like, I've addressed some concerns already. I've addressed the concern that perhaps you're going into it when you're not ready. What I mean by that is you need to prep yourself, perhaps learning about it a little bit, and also doing some relaxation exercises, deep breathing exercises. If you're into yoga, you know, or something like that, meditation, positive visualization. Visualize yourself eating food and not choking. Visualize yourself, I don't know, what's your phobia? Walking in a park and not getting stung by a bee. Visualize yourself walking next to dogs and not biting you, right? Visualize yourself getting on the plane, there's turbulence, and then you get down and you're fine. Visualize these things. If you do that, there's actually two things. There's something called positive visualization, where you visualize. Athletes do this. They visualize, you know, like, I'm going to score this goal, or I'm going to do this, right? I'm going to win the whatever. Then there's something known as imaginal kind of exposure, right? There's positive visualization, which is, I think, a type of imagination people can have. And there's also what's known as imaginal exposure, specifically for people who have specific phobias. I mentioned this before, I'm going to mention it again. Obviously my videos aren't very popular. I think this is stuff that is worth saying again and again. Imaginal exposure is where you imagine, brings me to my third point, is where you imagine your fear, or the thing that caused you fear. For me, I had at work, you know, I don't know if I had PTSD. I wasn't diagnosed with PTSD. I think I recalled it in the video. There was something just before PTSD that if it's not treated, can become full-blown PTSD. I think it's called stress syndrome, or major stress syndrome. The point is, it's like you're just on the verge of having PTSD. You're reaching subclinical levels of PTSD. Basically, a doctor could probably diagnose you with PTSD if you really wanted to. And I forgot what I was talking about. Sorry. It happens sometimes. I don't have a script. I'm just thinking out loud. Yes, my third point, which is imaginal exposure. Imaginal exposure is where you imagine, for example, doing the things. You imagine, let's take my example of choking phobia. I would imagine, let's see if I can do it right now. I'm not a big fan of it. I mean, I think it works. Imagine eating a chicken nugget, or eating a steak, or, you know, and I imagine, or a pierogi, and I imagine how the steps I would take, you know. For example, eating a chicken nugget, I have to, you know, drive to McDonald's, right? There might be a line there, and then you go to the drive-through, and I mean, you wait in the line, you get your food, or you order, you get your food, and then, you know, you pay, and, well, you know, you gotta deal with that. Then you come home, and you decide where do you want to eat it, right? And then you sit, and you say, okay, you take one nugget out, because you don't buy one nugget, so you gotta get like a kid's meal or something, right? So you get the kid's meal, you probably get the toy. Which toy you're gonna get? Probably Frozen 2. Because why not, right? It's out. And then you know, look at the chicken nugget. You maybe feel how would your fingers feel? Would they be cold? Would they be hot? Would they be numb? Where would that feeling go then from your fingers? Because first you're looking at the nugget. It's golden. You can see the fry. You can see the fact it's deep fried. It's golden. Perhaps you smell. And this is imaginal exposure. You do this until you get really, really anxious. Stay with that anxiety. Stay with that thought. Stay with, you know, as my therapist would say, stay with it, and which is my motto, stay with it. No, his motto is stay with that. My motto is stay with it. It's the same thing. Stay with it. You know what I mean? Stay with your anxiety. Like, live where it lives. Basically, kick it out. And, I mean, unless it pays rent. No, seriously, though. I mean, phobias don't pay rent. Maybe they cost way too much. They force you to pay more than you should. So that's imaginal exposure. And as I did it with my psychologist, and I don't know if it was like, I mean, the best type of exposure. It definitely allowed me to feel more comfortable with who I am, and it allowed me to kind of have like an imagination and a freedom in my brain that I thought I never had before. To say I actually, benefited from exposure therapy is I don't know if I benefited from imaginal exposure therapy. Like, I know I benefited from, you know, what's known as in vivo exposure therapy, where you actually do it, the practical exposure therapy. Now, whether I benefited from imaginal, honestly, imaginal is like less. You have in vivo, imaginal is like here. For me, for some people, imaginal might work. I found that when I did an imaginal exposure, I had a lot of images that were coming to me that I just went with because, like, the psychologist told me to go with. And I think if I did an imaginal exposure with someone who's perhaps like of a different like worldview, I mean like a religious person, like a sheikh or a scholar, I would definitely get different types of images coming to my head and different types of you know, it's known as like thoughts and imaginations, you know, I think. Because I think unless you're very, very qualified, and this was said in the video, to do imaginal exposures, you really shouldn't, because you could easily lead the client into something they may, you know, aren't necessarily feeling. There may be some sort of disconnect, because when you're doing an imaginal exposure, at the end of the day, no one's going to know how they feel, you know, except the person who's feeling it. So if you have this fear you're dealing with, and this therapist who has been in school for many, many years and probably knows a lot about these things is helping you along, yet you feel perhaps he's coaching you too much, just say stop. And say perhaps this isn't helping, or we could try another method, or we could try again tomorrow. Maybe I can do some prep work, you know, do some relaxation, or do some kind of like goal setting in terms of what do I want to do first for my imaginal, you know, kind of get more focused. Because I think if you don't get focused, you can just end up wasting your time with imaginal exposure. I mean, isn't that what phobias really are? We just imagine being anxious all the time. I mean, it's worked to a certain extent for me. And as I said, it helped me break free. For me, it's like the first step. Imaginal exposure for me was the first step. See, I was very conservative religious. And you know, when I went to therapy, I was kind of desperate. I was basically ready to kill myself. So when he told me about this imaginal exposure, I felt free. I felt I could think anything. Because before then, I wouldn't think certain things. Like I would think they're un-Islamic. Gay people, looking at women, eating too much, praying late, praying lazily, right? You know, different things like that. Not smoking, you know, not swearing, respecting your family. You know, I would get very, very conservative, very, very. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't even know why I'm doing this. Just very, very conservative with my religion. So much so that, I said before in many other videos, I thought I could just like make my homosexuality go away. I know it sounds kind of almost silly, and I feel a bit like surreal, or what's like depersonalized right now just saying it. That this is something I actually tried to do, and there's a fear in me right now that's coming. I have this fear that this fear that he's never going to leave me. I'm going to be gay forever. You can't wake up one day and stop being gay. And now I understand. And that's, I think, how imaginal therapy, imaginal exposure helped me. It put me in the door of taking your thoughts and your images and everything you hear and everything you perceive, just everything about you, you know, it allows you to say, well, you could think anything you want. I mean, if you want to think it's okay to have sex with a guy, I mean, you're not going to find anyone, I mean, you'll find people who will agree with you. Right? And who will also say there's no shame in that. There should be no implicit guilt in that. You're not necessarily what's the word, condemned to hell or God's wrath or any sort of evil for that. It's not an evil thing. It's about as natural as a lion, right, killing a hyena. Right? We don't say the lion is evil because he killed the hyena. He's just simply hungry. And yet, a lot of people, when they choose to, satisfy their hunger of a family, a mate, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, dating, it's somehow considered untoward. I get to a certain extent, like dating is not, it's not something, I know I should find someone. I also know it's more comfortable for me to be kind of like in a gay relationship. It's very foreign to be in a straight relationship. It just, because I identify more with the girl in things. I notice that a lot. Like, I identify with the girl or as the girl. Like, I wonder, like, what is she thinking? What is she going through? How does she deal with her life, things she does with, rather than looking at her as like a sex object, like I'm sure some males would. Like, I'm bisexual, so I'm not sexually attracted to women. I just sometimes think it would be cool to kind of like just be a woman, like dress like one and be treated by one from society and not have, and feel pretty. So these are thoughts. As I said, imaginal exposure is good. The real exposure, though, as I mentioned, don't want to belate this too longer, is what's known as in vivio exposure, where you actually get in there. In vivio means is like in, it's like in. You get in there. You do it practically. You get your hands dirty, pick up the dirt, wash it off. You know what I mean? And because I think that is the most promising and the most effective, because it allows the person to feel their own fear, right, in a safe way, legitimizing their fear. A lot of people don't want their fear, like they fear that their fear is not legitimate. Like, you think it's normal to feel this way. When you're allowed to feel this way in a safe way, being assured there will be no harm coming to you, because you could say stop at any time, right? You trust a psychologist. I forget what I was gonna say. I'm pretty sure that means like that's good. I'm pretty sure. I apologize if I didn't make a video yesterday. I know I did make a video. It's just I forgot if I uploaded it or not. I think I did upload it. So if I didn't, it's gonna come up. Don't worry, it'll come up by the end of the day. So this is basically it. Again, it went from a 10, stay to a 10. And it's gonna. I think that's kind of like how it is. My 10 though used to be 80. You understand what I mean? My 10, because it's a curve. You start here, and it goes higher and higher and higher. The more you avoid what it is you're supposed to be doing, right? And when you finally make the conscious decision to do an exposure, whatever level you're at before the exposure, let's say it was an 80, it will become 70 the next time. You understand? So when you start again, when you're starting here, right, it'll be 70. And then it will start going up and up and up. And you've already done it at 80, and it went down. So it goes 70, 80, 90, however high it's going to go. Do you understand? No, there's like a frame now, a reference. Before it was just whatever. It was 9 million, 9 million and 1, 9 million and 2, until you finally decide I need an exposure. That number goes down. And that's the beginning number you start again with your second exposure. When you do something maybe more, what's known as gradated. Sorry for saying that in such a surprising way. More gradated. So I don't know what else to say. I just don't want to beat a dead horse here. I want to just make sure everyone's clear about what my videos are about and what this video was about. There's definitely other things to talk about, like nutrition. And I hear a lot of people saying depression. I get it. I've had depression. I sometimes feel very depressed. So let's talk about depression real quick. I mean, what's the cure? How did I get better? Am I better? What is depression? Depression is low fatigue, low energy, no outlet, changes in appetite, irritability, right? Changes in sex drive, loss of interest in friends. So when you become a person that people around you would say, you're not the same person you used to be. So for me, it happened, I want to say, like 2 or 3 months after my breakup. You know, I kind of realized that people were looking at me and they were saying, you aren't the person you used to be. And they don't have to say that. I say it a lot. Right? I say it a lot. Tone of voice and body language says it a lot. Okay, I'm going out to do this. You want to come? Becomes stay out of his way, because what's the point of even asking him? You know, and that says a lot. I'm not blaming anybody for these things. It's not like any of these people really knew what was going on. I mean, to a certain extent, anxiety is something that you have to deal with yourself. It's not something that's gonna just you brought it upon yourself so you can get yourself out. It's like one of those, like, not you brought it upon yourself. There's genetics and stuff. What I mean to say is you got yourself into this specific situation where you're not going out, you're reading all day, and you're on the computer, and you just, do nothing all day except smoke weed and go outside. I get that. The thing is, you are doing those things. No one is saying, like, do those things except you, your brain, your mind, your consciousness, whatever you want, your soul, destiny. At the end of the day, you're doing it. You're the one getting up to go have those cigarettes. You're the one lying in bed to read. So that's what depression is. Next question is, how did I get out of it? The next question is, did I get out of it? No, I didn't get out of it. I have depression. I will always have depression. There are days where I'll be less depressed and days I'll be more depressed. I'll always have depression. As far as I know, there isn't a cure for depression. See, depression is different than anxiety. At least I don't know a lot about depression. I know a lot about anxiety. I'm a very anxious person, so I know a lot about anxiety, how to deal with it, stay with it, breathe, and do relaxation exercises, and meditation, and faith, and all these great things. Depression is a whole other ballgame. Depression is the opposite of anxiety. With anxiety, you feel too up. With depression, you feel too down. So I don't know how to. I didn't get out of it. Question is now, third question: how do you get out of it? Right? Like, is there a way to get out of it? And if yes, how do you get out of it? Is there a way to get out of it? I'm convinced there is. I'm convinced people have gone from depression to less depressed ways, and if that's considered a cure or a treatment, I believe it. As long as it's backed by science and psychology. Fourth question: what is that treatment? I don't know. On the one hand, there's nutrition. I've heard nutrition helps. I've heard people say you may not even have depression. You may have like a physiological problem with your body that's causing symptoms that appear to be, depression. There actually aren't. First thing you gotta do, I think, would be to go to a doctor, like your family doctor. If you don't have a family doctor, just any doctor. You just make an appointment, walk in. You should get a family doctor if you don't have one, and just say, I feel depressed, and can I get some blood tests to just rule out any sort of physical abnormalities. Right? Tests are very important to get tests, blood tests. I've gotten a blood test, I've gotten a heart test, I've gotten an MRI, throat test, neck test, just to rule out any sort of biological predispositions you may have. I've heard people say you could have what's known as hypothyroidism, which kind of mimics depression in a way. I've heard that because it also runs in my family. Now, I've never been diagnosed with it. I've never asked the doctor, do you think I have it? I think I may have some symptoms. I definitely do have, get teary-eyed a lot. Explains the swallowing problems, the low fatigue, the coldness in my fingers. It's possible. I've never been diagnosed, so I can't really, speak to that as much as just say that it's possible that I have it. And I don't really believe in a lot of self-diagnoses, because I, for the longest time, thought I had Asperger's syndrome because I self-diagnosed. And it wasn't until I actually went to a doctor and he said, no, you don't have Asperger's syndrome. Sir, you have autistic traits. Definitely you have autistic traits, like the fact that you only eat certain foods and you just completely blanket statement reject a lot of the others, and the fact that you had difficulty making friends in high school. shows that perhaps you have autistic traits. That doesn't mean you're autistic by any stretch of the imagination, or you have some sort of high functioning autism like Asperger's syndrome. No, that's what I thought I had, Asperger's syndrome. I was convinced it explained everything. It explained why I couldn't make friends. It explained why the way I was. It explained my quirks. It explained why I liked certain things a lot more than others. Then I realized, no, you like certain things more than others because those are just things you're interested in. I mean, if someone didn't want to talk about that, you're not going to get angry. You're just going to be like, all right, I mean, I guess we're not talking about that. No one's going to stop me from leaving the conversation and learning about these things on my own. You know, that's the difference, I think, with someone who has Asperger's syndrome and someone who doesn't. Someone who has Asperger's syndrome, if they want to talk about what's something they're interested in, and you don't want to talk about it, let's say they want to talk about psychology, and you don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about video games, or you want to talk about, I don't know, marijuana, or you want to talk about like movies. So let's have a conversation. Let's have a conversation go. I'm me, and then I'll also be someone else. So, hi, how's it going, man? Long time no see. And she'd be like, hey, how's it going? Good. And then I'd be like, all right, man. What do you want to? It's nice for you to come over. What do you guys want to do? I mean, what do you want to do? You want to get something to eat? And she'd be like, yeah, sure. Let's go get something to eat. So we get something to eat. Come back. Like, yeah, that was great, you know. And then we'd come home and be like, all right, cool. So, and then maybe she'd say something like, oh, did you notice that guy? He was like looking so anxious because he probably has anxiety. Be like, oh yeah, I didn't really notice that. That's really interesting. Maybe he does have anxiety. Why do you think that? And so then we talk, you know, because I am mindful of people who have autism. I'd let them talk for at least some period of time. I mean, it's kind of like they feel like that's what they want to do. And if I'm interested in it, I'm not going to stop them. They're very, very smart people. I mean, right? So I'd be like, yeah, tell me, how do you think this person had anxiety? Please go on and on about anxiety. And was it the body language or the tone of voice, or was it what he ate? Like, what was it? Or maybe I'll talk with her about 15 minutes about anxiety. And then I'd get bored, right? And the thing is, she wouldn't realize I'm getting bored because, you know, doing something like, oh, or yawning in her face, or looking away, or, you know, fidgety. She doesn't recognize those things. Even tone of voice, like, yeah, psychology. You know, like if I was to say it like that, she'd finally realize, like, yeah, maybe it's not that interesting. Fortunately, people who have Asperger's syndrome don't pick up these social cues. Eventually, though, you need to tell someone who has Asperger's syndrome, I don't want to talk about the same thing you want to talk about for that long. So then you just switch the subject. You say, yeah, you know, psychology, I'm just not that interested anymore. Like, that must have been why he must have been anxious, because of his body language. So did you see the new movie that came out today? And when you say that to them, they'll just kind of get very, very angry. They won't even let you speak most of the time, at least I think. I mean, one of my friends had Asperger's syndrome, and I remember sometimes she would get very, very angry when I interrupted her speaking. And I kind of get that, because interrupting someone speaking is pretty damn annoying. And I realize that it can be annoying because that's happened to me. It's when I'm trying to like get a word in edgewise, if that's allowed. Because there are times where I maybe talk too much. It's when I try to get a word in edgewise and I can't. When I want to like, you know, change the subject or kind of like ask her opinion on something, she would just kind of be like, please don't interrupt me. I told you before, please don't interrupt me. And then she'd go on about what she's talking about. And that's interesting. It's just that if I wanted to hear a lecture about something, I go on YouTube. I mean, you know, if I want to have a conversation with someone, I would talk to them like I am now. So then I finally got to, like, you know, as I said, this cat's annoying for some people who have Asperger's syndrome, and people who don't have Asperger's syndrome. When they're friends, right? You're like, yeah, so how's that movie going? You're like, well, I want to talk more about the psychology. And you'd be like, well, we've been talking about it for like 15 minutes. Can we maybe talk about something else? And she would just like, fine. You know what I mean? Like, it would be such a... And then she would, like, bring the mood down, you know, because she's got to understand other people's points of view. She needs to understand that other people have things they want to talk about, they want to express, they want to feel, and it's not always about you. I mean, it's hard to understand that for people who have Asperger's syndrome, and I couldn't even begin to understand it. And, I thank God I don't have Asperger's syndrome. And perhaps that's partly why a lot of people who have Asperger's syndrome stay with friends who have Asperger's syndrome. I know my ex-boyfriend, he didn't have Asperger's syndrome. I definitely thought he did, though. I don't think he was diagnosed. I definitely thought he did, though. And I mentioned this to him, and he said, no, I don't think I do. My best friend, though, has Asperger's. So I was like, oh, there you go. Right? People who have Asperger's syndrome, like, when they talk to other people, those people, in a way, start acting like they have Asperger's syndrome too, just to be agreeable, And also because people who have Asperger's syndrome are incredibly smart, and if you want to really have a connection with them and like have a type of real, genuine, smart conversation with them, sometimes you need to shut up and just let them go on and on and on about whatever they want to talk about, and just hope to goodness it's also what you want to learn about. So, just a quick thing here. I'm gonna smoke some marijuana. It is legal in my country. If there's any children who are watching this video, please stop watching from this point on, because some of these videos may have drug drug use in them. I was gonna say abuse, and then I was like, okay, abuse, good one. Anyway, abuse, it's a funny one. No, I'm pretty sure I smoke very, very, very low grade weed. I mean, ugh. I think this is off topic. I smoke. Most people grade their weed by THC content. The higher the THC content, the higher you're gonna get. With flower, with the plants that grow and that are dried and rolled into joints, you can get, I think the highest you can get is something like 27, 28% THC. Which means after about five puffs, you're stoned. You're stoned, and you're not going to be unstoned for at least an hour, okay? If you're smoking the 29% THC. I smoke 10% THC. I mean, it's marketed as 10 to 15% THC. This one's like, I think, about 15%, you know. I did the something like that, 15, 16%, which is considered medium potency. It's just I can't really get anything lower than that these days. I primarily smoke 10% THC. What I mean by that is, this is for, let's say it's 15%. I'd smoke half of it. You know, you're just like, it's a whole joint. You can smoke the whole thing. I smoke half of it and then put it away and then smoke the other half. I mean, unless I really, really, really want to get stoned, then I would smoke 3/4 of it and then put it away. Which looks like what I'm probably gonna do today, like right now. And yeah, I mentioned before on my channel, you know, weed and I don't want to kid myself, and I'm prefacing this by saying marijuana should only be used in consultation with a doctor, and it should only be used legally from a legal source. So this only applies to countries and states where it's legal. And also that you should know what type of weed you're smoking. You should know what THC means, you should know what sativa means, you should know what indica means, you should know what CBT means. You know, you don't really need to know what terpenes mean, or you know, what it tastes like, what do they call that, the taste profile or flavor profile. Those things aren't important. Talking psychologically, is I think you should know if you're thinking about getting into marijuana. I don't recommend it for anyone under the age of 18. I mean, you should wait until you're at least 18 to smoke it, because your brain is developing. Even until you're 21, your brain's still developing. I mean, there's a lot of myths going on about it. I don't really, you know, I'm just gonna contribute to them because I don't know much more about it. I know, like, for example, I mean, I don't know, this is a myth that I've heard that may or may not be true. Marijuana kills brain cells. I don't know, so does that mean it makes you dumb? I don't know. Or is it cigarettes that kill brain cells? I heard cigarettes also kill brain cells. And I also heard brain cells are the only cells in the body that can't regenerate. These are things I don't know. At the same time, how dangerous are these things? Like, if the government is selling it and it's been used for people who have terminal illnesses, for their pain, and it's been used for hundreds of thousands of years, I'm assuming, from people in like the Indian subcontinent would use it a lot. You know, it's not like, I don't think anyone's ever died from smoking marijuana either, so. As I said though, I don't recommend it for children. Yeah, so my plan for today, I think I'm gonna end the video here. I got nothing else to say. I'm gonna go inside real quick and yeah, I'm gonna end it here, guys. Went from a 10 to a 10. I apologize if there wasn't a video yesterday. It will come out simultaneously. It'll be on the YouTube one in the day. Okay? Alright guys, that's my video. Stay with it.